Hey, it is finally that time again whereby I get the opportunity to review a Beatles product, and that's what I'm here for today. Now, on the 15th of October this year, so just over a week ago, we had another reissue / re-release of a popular Beatles album that had been remastered and remixed by Giles Martin. However, most of you will be aware that this particular release was supposed to come out last year. Of course, due to the obvious issues surrounding COVID, we had to wait a little while, and therefore this 50-year anniversary release of the wonderful Let It Be is technically 51 years old today. Now, as most of you will know, there's two things about me really. One is that I am a big Beatle buff and proud of it. The other is that I'm a huge fan of vinyl. And therefore today's review, as always, is going to be solely based upon the vinyl release, specifically the Super Deluxe Vinyl release of Let It Be. Now, as I'm sure all of you are aware, there have been a number of different formats that have come out to accompany these releases over the course of the last 3-4 years. So, Sgt. Pepper, the White Album, Abbey Road, and obviously now Let It Be, has come out in a number of different formats in order to accompany these big anniversary dates. This is no different. So you might be someone, for example, who's bought the single CD edition. You might be someone who has bought the 2 CD edition. You might also be someone who's bought the 87 disc Blu-ray edition with flashing lights. A bit of an exaggeration, I know, but if that's your bag, fair play to you. However, me being me, I had to buy the vinyl one. I could, of course, bought the standard edition, single LP edition. I decided not to because I wanted the big Super Deluxe Special Edition box set, which again looks a little bit like this. Oh, coming out. There we go. Yeah, looks a little bit like this and retails at about £130. Now, that's not cheap, I know. Unfortunately, it's the price we pay for being fans of the Fab Four, but that seems to be a conversation that will need to be had at another time. It does get very, very expensive. However, one thing I will say is that I cannot knock the quality of this record. Alongside this though, what I could have also bought is the picture disc, which is the same as the standard vinyl, the same remix from Giles Martin is contained within it, but if you wanted the fancy picture disc as well, they also do that. That retails at about £34. In kind of comparison to the kind of one that came out with Sgt. Pepper, the one with Abbey Road, there has been a little bit of kind of difficulty, for me anyway, obtaining a copy of that. If I do manage to get my hands on a copy of that at some point, hopefully I'll do maybe a little review or a little piece about it at some point. For some reason I scratch my head, it doesn't seem to be so kind of available within the public domain, but again, that's a conversation for another time. In terms of reviewing the product, before I kind of get into it, into the nitty gritty, one thing I'll say is that today's review is basically about the content of this box set, the Super Deluxe Edition. So I'm going to be looking at the pros and the cons of the packaging, what's contained within it, for example, but also in perhaps comparison to some of my earlier reviews, I'm going to be able to talk about the content of the music, the mix itself that Giles Martin has done and the extras that are contained within. Not normally something I'm able to do. However, I've actually had the opportunity to listen to absolutely everything that's contained within this box set prior to kind of compiling this upload. So, you know, there's going to be pros, there's going to be cons, and of course that's subjective. These are my opinions and you may agree or disagree. That's absolutely fine because we're all fans here and we've all got our particular kind of view or stance on how the Beatles should sound. Last disclaimer before I kind of get into kind of what's in the box, a little bit more about Let It Be itself, is that I'm not really reviewing the music per se. This isn't a review on the Beatles' Let It Be. We all know what's contained on that album. We all have a particular opinion of the tracks themselves, and that's not what this review is. This is about the mix by Giles Martin. So just to make that point before we move any further forward. Now, Let It Be, as I'm sure most of you know, is it's an interesting album. It's a concept album per se. The Beatles themselves in 1970 had an idea whereby they kind of wanted to get back to their roots. They wanted to perform live music again, but in a setting that suited them. Therefore, the creation of Let It Be kind of came about because of that. They wanted to create an album, like a fly-on-the-wall documentary. So there was this idea that a documentary film would accompany an album, and the film itself would show them as a band, as a unit, as the biggest band in the world at the time, creating an album from point A to point B. Okay, and all that involves, from initial ideas to full flourish songs come the end of it. However, one of the problems with this is that they never really saw the idea through. In fact, the Beatles themselves washed their hands of this project after the course of a month of having enjoyed themselves, so to speak. And when I say enjoyed themselves, hopefully, what we've got coming out in November the 25th is Peter Jackson's 6-hour special, which of course uses hours and hours and hours of footage that we didn't see in the original 1970s film. The 1970s film, of course, paints a picture of a band breaking up, and yes, they were breaking up, they were moving their separate ways, but that's not to say that the Let It Be sessions over the course of that month in 1970 weren't happy ones, right? There were many, many happy moments, and of course, this is a collection of songs that still to this day stands the test of time. It's still a beautiful collection. However, my opinion, as I'll paint it very, very quickly, is that this is a mismatch. One of the things about the original Let It Be album that, of course, was left to Phil Spector to produce is that, there's a couple of tracks in there that don't need to be in there. There's a couple of tracks that aren't in there for some reason, and also we've got, we don't have the entirety of the rooftop concert. Instead, we have this mixture of live performance and studio performance, which doesn't really ever go anywhere from, again, A to B. And that was always the issue with this album. If you ask me, if you want a good kind of listen, if you want a good idea as to what this album could have been, then listen to Let It Be Naked from 2003. That is a much more coherent piece of work. Thankfully though, this box set kind of dispels some of that, some of those myths that accompany this sad, sad story that was their final album. If you ask me, personally, we all know Abbey Road was their last album. It's the album that should have actually ended it, but of course this came out much later. Phil Spector produced it with his big wall of sound, which accompanies all of 2 songs. Again, I'm just kind of, forcing my view down the camera lens. It's not that big a deal. We do get a better mix here though. So like I was saying, one of the things that you do get when you get a box set like this is that it can kind of fill in the gaps. A lot of the extras actually fill in the gaps with bits and pieces that are missing from the album itself. So let's have a look at it. Let's just go straight in. Here is Let It Be. Here is the box. As you can see, absolutely lovely quality, really strong cardboard sleeve. And we'll get into the kind of nitty-gritty in a minute. One of the things I will say about this, especially if you're considering purchasing it, some people have noted that the box itself actually opens the wrong way round. In fact, the cover, this lovely cover with the 4 cutouts in order to see the faces of the 4 Beatles, is on the wrong way round. As you can see here, this is the back, which is actually the front. Which has all the track listings of all the various albums that are contained within. Some people have said that this is a real negative, and fair enough if that's what you think. For me, not so much. Maybe it's because I'm left-handed, I'm not entirely sure, but it just makes sense that the cover was this way round, because everything that then comes out of the box, everything that you then take out of the box, is therefore facing the right way. I'm not going to go kind of into too much detail about what would happen if you had it this way round, but again, the sleeves, the spines wouldn't quite line up in an appropriate way or something like that. Trying to get the albums to come out face forward might be more complicated. I don't know, it's whatever you prefer, but personally I prefer being able to open the box and see things come out the correct way round. But anyway, that's one of the cons that people talk about. Now, the first thing you get when you open the box is you get this lovely kind of, I think it's 103, 104 page book. Much like the Get Back book that came out a couple of months ago. It's similar in the sense that it contains lots and lots and lots of images from the recording sessions at Twickenham Studio, for example, and lots of details with regards to individual tracks, when they were recorded, how they were mixed, how they came about from, again, point A to B. You also get kind of images, to give you an example, of some of the lyrical bits and pieces that were handwritten by the band at the time, which I think is really, really, really nice. I've actually read through this, and it's a lovely read. Nothing you wouldn't have read before. If you're a fan like me, you would have come across a lot of this before, but still very nice to have in one handy booklet. And also, if you've got this, it might make you reconsider spending another 40 quid on the book that has come out in order to accompany this Peter Jackson film. But again, that's entirely up to you. Moving on, the first thing that you see in terms of record is you get this. You'll be all very familiar with this. This is what you can buy separately for about £26 or whatever it is. In record shops. It's a replica of the original album. Of course, the only difference being that this has been mixed by George's son Giles. Okay, it looks absolutely gorgeous. Playing wise, I'll get onto the sound in a bit, but there you go. That's the first record that you get within the packet. Following that, you get this, which is quite nice. It comes in a gatefold, and this is the Get Back Apple Sessions, Rehearsals, and Apple Jams. One of the things I will say about this, again, I'm not going to mention anything to do with the kind of sound, so to speak, but one thing I'll say about the content, which I know has disappointed a lot of people, does to an extent disappoint me, but again, not enough to really be kind of upset about what I've purchased, is that a lot of the outtakes that are contained on here are actually outtakes that you've heard before. For example, there is an awful lot that you might have already come across on the anthology albums. Considering there is about kind of 60 hours worth of footage from this time in 1970, you could argue that perhaps this is a missed opportunity to kind of, you know, press onto record a number of tracks that we've not heard before. In fact, there's an awful lot of takes of particular songs in comparison to others, which is somewhat of a shame, but still it's a really nice listen to either way. Either way, it's nicer to have all that content in one solid place. Anyway, that's that. What you then get is you get the Beatles Get Back album. Now, for those of you that don't know, this is how the album was perhaps originally intended. This was, of course, produced by Glyn Johns, who was working with the Beatles, was working within the studio at the time. He decided to create what he considered a definitive version of the tracks at the time, in terms of breakdowns, in terms of, you know, this to us listening to a band who was kind of going from A to B, as I've said so many times before. And this is the result. Now, the music contained within is not of the best quality, and it's no surprise when listening to this that this was actually turned down and dismissed very quickly by the Beatles as as kind of, you know, the record that should be released. It wasn't released, it was never considered to be released, but this is in many ways actually slightly better in terms of adhering to what the Beatles' original idea actually was. And also, one thing I will say, I'm not going to harp on too much about the kind of sound quality of the tracks. I think that's very, very obvious. There are a lot of breakdowns within the music. Many tracks just kind of fall flat. Sound quality is not good, etc., etc. I'm not going to harp on too much about that in this case. But one of the things I do love about having kind of actual replica copy of this is the image that was created. This was the image that was created. You probably know it from the Blue album. I was going to say Red, but the Blue album, one of the compilation albums that was brought out in the 70s. This is the image used on that, but of course this image was made for this project, and the idea being that they were going to release it just like this to look like their first album cover. Please me. I actually love this. I wish the album had looked like this. Unfortunately they didn't, and for some reason or another we got the image that we're all aware of today. We even got the title that we're aware of today. But you know, if you want kind of a little bit of history, that's kind of what this is. It's not a bad listen. I quite enjoy it. And you can see what the idea was around this when you listen to it. Unfortunately, the production, the quality of it, would never have made it. But anyway, there's that. There's the Beatles Get Back as it was perhaps originally intended. And last but not least, you get, interestingly, you get the EP in a non-EP format, which is very interesting, which contains 4 tracks, including a version of kind of Across the Universe that you may or may not have heard, which is possibly the best one. You got Don't Let Me Down on there. You got the original Let It Be mix. Yeah, I think I'm Me Mine's on there as well. But this is it's an EP. It's an EP on a 12-inch record, which is interesting itself. A bit of a wasted opportunity, but it's created in order to fit the box, really. I was hoping it would actually come in a little 45, but that's just me. But anyway, that's what's contained within the box. Now a little bit about the music. Like I say, I've actually had the opportunity to listen to a number of these. One of the things I will say is that, like with all these remixes over the course of the last 4 years, is you do get a brilliant sound. Whether it's the sound you want is, again, subjective. It's entirely up to you. This is actually the first kind of remix that I've encountered out of all of them whereby I'm not entirely sure. And that doesn't mean I'm being negative about it, I'm just not entirely sure. And that being that there's a lot of tracks that sound absolutely brilliant to your ear. The moment you drop the needle on Two of Us, for example, you can hear the voices much more clearly. Everything seems to have been a bit stripped back. You can hear lead guitar elements, vocals, much clearer than you ever thought you would be able to. However, that doesn't work for every song. That's one thing I will say. And this is something I've never thought before. Again, when thinking about Sgt. Pepper, White Album, Abbey Road, I never thought this. But there's a couple of tracks, one in particular I'll mention. I'm a huge fan of One After 909. But One After 909 on this remix, and of course that's going to be the same if you've got the single edition. You don't need to have this special edition in order to encounter this. You can have the picture disc like I mentioned earlier. The mix itself is going to be the same, of course. One of the problems I find is that I almost don't like the song as much as I used to. They've done something to it. They've brought elements kind of more out into the mix, which make it almost sound like a different track. Now, most of the time that works, but for me, that's an example, and there may be others, I can't quite think of them now, but that's the one that stands out to me, that makes me think, oh, I'm not too sure I like this. There's just elements of sound, elements of kind of instruments or examples of instruments clashing against one another that doesn't quite work for me, and that might be solely because, you know, again, that was a live track done on a rooftop 50 odd years ago, right? And as good as this band were, and don't get me wrong, they were phenomenal, you know, there still might have been moments where timing was a little bit skewed, if I'm not sure. But for me, it doesn't sound right. Tracks though, you know, so name some good ones, because I do want to try and be positive as well. Tracks like The Long and Winding Road have perhaps never sounded better. Again, like I said earlier, Across the Universe never sounded better. The version of Don't Let Me Down, the single version, absolutely brilliant. Should be on the album itself, but again, that's the problem with Let It Be, isn't it? So why buy this? Why buy this? That's always the question I come back to at the end. Well, buy it because it's something different. Buy it because you're a fan. Buy it because you like to own things in special, sexy, deluxe boxes. Buy it because, you know, in many ways it probably is the best kind of copy of Let It Be. It's something similar to what was kind of out at the time, and also it's something nice to have within the collection. Is it going to change your mind about this album? Well, no. Are you going to suddenly be rating Let It Be higher up in your kind of lists, so to speak, of what are your favourite records within their kind of canon? No, you're not going to think that. The problem with Let It Be is that the album itself never quite worked. It's a great collection of songs, but the premise was missed in the first place. And unless you're going to do, or unless they're going to do, a kind of remix, remaster of something like Let It Be Naked, for example, this album is never going to feel like a Sgt. Pepper or a White Album or an Abbey Road. It's never going to feel like that. You know, I'm still craving, you know, them to do... I still want them to do a Revolver, a Rubber Soul. There are albums out there that they could have spent this amount of time on. I'm all for the film that's coming out in November, the 6-hour 3-part epic. I'm all for that. Did we need this reissue? Did we need this remaster? Possibly not. But it is nice to hear particular tracks with more clarity. Really, is that worth spending £130 on? No, but what you do get is probably the best quality box set that we've had. One of the things that kind of comes up time and time again with these reissues is this question of, well, why aren't they all kind of more formulaic? Why aren't they all in similar boxes? Why aren't they all produced in a way that kind of, you know, fits in with one another? It's a good question. Personally, I like the fact that they're all a bit different. The box sets are all a bit different. The only thing that comes with that, though, is that, you know, sometimes you do question quality. I mean, we didn't get a big fancy box set for Sgt. Pepper. I know you did if you bought the CDs, but you didn't get one if you were a fan of the vinyl. Again, a missed opportunity perhaps for an album that good. The White Album box set was brilliant. Abbey Road, the content was brilliant. The box set quality itself, perhaps not so good in my opinion. This is the best quality that they've done. However, missed opportunities galore in this. There is so much more content they could have included, which I think is the biggest disappointment. But fundamentally, will you enjoy listening to this? Will this give you some form of excitement when it comes to counting down the days for the film that's coming out soon? Well, yes, it will. And as far as I'm concerned, that's about all I can say on the matter. Lastly, one thing I will say, and I appreciate all of you for sticking with me this entire time while I kind of ranted on, is that soon, and very soon, I'm going to be doing another review. I'm going to be doing a review on the solo albums of the Beatles, so please do watch out for that. Coming up will be John Lennon first and foremost. He has to be first. It's always first in my mind. I will be taking a look and I will be reviewing John Lennon's albums in terms of what I consider to be his best and worst. So please do watch this space for that. Until then, thank you ever so much, and let it be, well, let it be.